Let's talk some Resident Evil Requiem over on this channel. I know I usually talk movies and TV, but I'm a big person on video games. Like, I love video games. It's like my favorite thing to do, which, side note, you should go subscribe to Hot My Gaming down below. We might be changing the channel name, but we have a collection of great creators. They're going to be creating a lot of cool video game content. We're going to be launching a podcast over there very soon. Do look forward to that. We'll have a full spoiler discussion over there as well for Resident Evil Requiem. But over here, I did definitely want to jump in and kind of just give like my own impersonal thoughts. I beat the game. I beat the game last night. I usually never stay up past 10 because of my 1-year-old son. But I was towards the end and I knew I needed to beat this game. And I ended up staying till 1 a.m. blasting through Resident Evil Requiem. And this is how I know I love the game. The second it ended, I wanted to jump right back in and start playing it again. I want to platinum this game. I'm obsessed with it. I've never platinumed a Resident Evil game before, but this will be probably the first one I go right after. And I love my experience with it. And for me, as a little bit of a background story, Resident Evil has been one of those franchises that I've always liked, but I feel like since they've been doing these remakes per se, I've really fallen head over heels with not just the games itself, but the universe itself. And that's kind of been one of the things that I've now found myself having a softer appreciation for Resident Evil in terms of its storytelling, in terms of its characters, and even with certain issues and minutes that I have with certain things of how they decanonize things and change up the storylines and, make reasons for why certain things happen. Requiem, I actually think, is maybe the best Resident Evil game. I'll be doing a full ranking of like all the mainline series games on this channel soon, but yeah, Resident Evil Requiem hit the mark. I genuinely think this is a perfect game. I think it is a perfect Resident Evil game, and I genuinely am obsessed with it. I think down the road I could probably see this being one of my favorite games of all time, and that says a lot because scary games sometimes get right under my skin and I don't want to replay them. I even look back at like Resident Evil 7, which I've only played twice, genuinely, because the game just terrified me, and I think it's a good game, but I never had that eagerness to go back straight to it. Resident Evil Village, I also immensely liked a lot, even if I had some story issues with that game, but I thought it was so fun to play, and I will probably never replay that game because of just generally the baby sequence. No, that's a big fuck no from me. And there were sequences in Resident Evil Requiem that made me go, ah, hell no. Ah, hell no. And I love how this game very much balanced both Grace and Leon perfectly. I was a little bit hesitant going into this because of Grace. Leon Kennedy, like everyone else, is my favorite Resident Evil character. Resident Evil 4 is my favorite Resident Evil game as of before this one. And I love the original Resident Evil 4, and I love the remake for it. And, for me, Leon Kennedy is just a badass. He's suave, and I love every single thing they've ever done with this character. And personally, for me, I would have rather that's just done him. But I will say after finishing this game, which, by the way, I will not be doing spoilers on here since we'll be doing a spoiler review over on the Hot My Gaming channel. Might talk a little bit of some towards the end of this video, but I'll warn you before I do that. Grace, for me, shocked me how much I loved her as a character. Genuinely, maybe top 5 characters for Resident Evil. And I think that just goes as far to say how great the story is for Resident Evil Requiem. It is honestly a grand story. One that does have nostalgia, one that does play for that, but it very much, like many people have been saying, a victory lap for Capcom and Resident Evil itself. But I don't think it's just a victory lap. It's very much a full circle moment. A lot of things, and some of this can be up to my interpretation, but I feel it connects through all the Resident Evil mainline games into a really seamless way, but also leaving the door open for a lot of cool things to still come down the road. And as I'm sure they are remaking other Resident Evil games such as Resident Evil 0, Code Veronica, and probably even originally and eventually the first game, I can see them modernizing all these games to a certain degree, and I'm really curious to see what they end up doing with 5 and 6. But this game tackles basically a lot of storylines and seeming threads throughout that have kind of just been lingering, and that I feel like really much tied it up. And again, that's my impression of it. I really liked what they did here, because if you don't know what Resident Evil Requiem is about, well, it's about FBI analyst Grace Ashcroft, who has now been assigned to a case in the same place where her mother was murdered 8 years prior. But when word gets out that a police officer has gone missing at the hotel, veteran agent Leon S. Kennedy is also dispatched to the scene. But as Grace and Leon's path converge, they must face their past and uncover the truth behind behind the Raccoon City incident that changed the world forever. But while the terrors of their memories stay in their mind and echo there forever, will they relive this nightmare or finally offer up a requiem for the dead? I mean, that's about as far as you can get. And I will say this: I actually wish they never revealed you into Raccoon City for this game. I honestly, I think that would have been amazing to not touch on that. And I understand the whole concept, but like I was already sold on this game just from like the whole care center that Grace and Leon are in. Like I think that's such a great thing. It's very reminiscent of Resident Evil 2's police station. I think it's such a great way, especially in the way that it could just continues to open. But honestly, like the reveal of when Raccoon City comes up may be one of the best moments in gaming history. It reminded me of the moment in God of War when Kratos goes and pulls the Chaos Blades out and puts them on again. Like those type of moments where you just get reveals, but like the whole way that the Raccoon City just comes about, and specifically that scene and a character that shows up in there just had my jaw on the floor. I was hooting and hollering, genuinely hooting and hollering. And again, still questions on certain characters, but that is one thing that I love about Resident Evil Requiem is again just how it again answers so many questions, but at the same time leaves little story threads open for things that could continue in like a DLC, which I really hope they do an add-on for this. There's one character in particular that I really feel like we should have had a boss battle to. Again, we'll talk about that more when I get to my small spoiler section. But yeah, the story for here, fantastic. Like across the board, maybe the best Resident Evil story yet. I also love how it's very straightforward in a lot of ways. Obviously, it helps if you've played a lot of the other games, but I feel that the story was pretty straightforward, even if I wished it was maybe just a tad bit longer, like the whole game, just a smidge longer in terms of like maybe bringing in other characters, because for the most part, it's really only like 4 or 5 characters throughout the entire game, and it was kind of a shock to see that. I was expecting a little bit more of a grandiose thing, but I also think that's Capcom playing it not safe, but necessarily smarter, more simple, and I appreciate that. Now, when it comes down to the gameplay, Grace and Leon play completely different. Leon is basically just a more upgraded version of the Resident Evil 4 remake version of Leon, and it's incredible. It's badass. I felt powerful, and sometimes I even got too cocky and got my ass whooped. But I love that. I love the arsenal that he has. I love how they just let you go ham as Leon. And I think it's pretty badass. Like his moments still had some pretty good jump scares, but like it was like the release from the tension that I had with Grace, which every time I played as Grace, not gonna lie, I had to switch off first person because it was just too fucking scary. It was too fucking scary and suspenseful for me. Even if I don't think there's a moment that rivals the baby sequence, like in hindsight from Village, or even the Margaret sequence from Resident Evil 7, I still found that the atmosphere that they just crafted around Grace's sections, even the opening one with the hotel, very much unnervingly got under my skin to a degree that I was not expecting. And it very much terrorized me to a whole other avenue that, again, I always felt at edge in her sequences. And I think a lot of that goes to her as a character, the way that her mannerisms portray. And I love how in first and third person there's different things. Like in third person, she'll trip over herself or she'll shake when she's shooting the gun. And I think there's certain things like that that I really love. And I loved seeing that character arc progress throughout the game. But also with Grace's sections, they just feel so unedged, and a lot of that comes down to the sound design, which sound design is also strong in Leon's, but with hers, since it's so much more quiet, just every little avenue with the zombies or the infected or whatever you may see, you'll hear them talk since their personalities are still there. You'll have a character mentioning or saying certain words that you're just like, okay, that's a little weird to hear like them, but they keep their personality from what they were. You'll have maids or singing ones that, again, drastically got under my skin, and I genuinely didn't like that, but it kept me at edge, especially the singing zombies. Every time I heard it, honestly, I made it like a requirement to kill the fucking thing as soon as I could, because it just the screeches and everything of that I did not like, which is funny because like I had killed so many zombies during as Grace that when I went through his Leon section, like most of them are already dead because yeah, that's where it was. But I love a lot of these different avenues and the sequence and everything to that degree and how much they added to this. I think the gameplay was perfect. I don't know what you do next with this, with trying to balance it once again, because it feels it worked so well in here, But if you were to do a Resident Evil 10, how do you add that sequence? How do you bring that about? I feel like you may have to just go towards one protagonist, or in general, maybe a co op, or do something a little bit different. But I would like to see how they could touch on this, because it's going to be very interesting to see how they possibly can. Maybe the character has sequences like that. I don't know. I don't know how they do it, but I trust Capcom, because honestly, for me, they've knocked it out of the park with like the last, what, 6 Resident Evil games. Even Resident Evil 3's remake, which was fine, it could have been better. I still think they did a pretty fairly decent job with it. But that's where I'm at with Resident Evil Requiem. I'm in love with this game. I love the story. I love the gameplay. I love the way that they split everything between. The graphics are to a whole other level. The sound design, the production design, everything on that is absolutely brilliant. And I left Resident Evil Requiem absolutely in love with this game. This, again, could be my favorite Resident Evil game. I'm going to do my ranking fairly soon. But I cannot believe that Capcom pulled it off. And I can't believe I'm saying how much I love it, because I was on, honestly, I was on kind of like, hey, am I going to buy this game first day or not? And I ended up doing it just because, why not? Like, I had the extra funds, might as well try it out. I had a gift card. And I can't believe I was like even teetering on that. I genuinely love this game to every sort of degree. So with that said, I'm going to give you guys my score, and then I'm going to talk a couple spoiler lines. So overall, I'm going to give Resident Evil Requiem a 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5. I think you probably expected that. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1 now. Oh, shit. Yeah. Albert Wesker's clone, or Xeno. I want more on him. I thought it was Wesker for a second. I thought it was, but then I was like, nah, it's probably one of his, like, a different clone that we never knew about. But I love the Xeno stuff. I actually wish there were more story developments with that. But that just feels like a thread that's waiting to be touched upon. Gideon, I thought, was a fantastic villain. I wish he didn't disappear after the motorcycle sequence, one of the best set pieces in any Resident Evil game. I love that sequence. I love how audacious and insane it was. But the Gideon stuff, I think for me, I absolutely loved. I just wish he showed up a little bit more towards the end, especially as like you're kind of going back and forth with like Xeno and things like that. Or as long as you would have gotten a boss fight with Xeno, I think that was kind of like really. But what I really love is that they found an antivirus. That Elpis was actually something that Spencer left behind. And I think that is one of the coolest things. I also really, really love the reveals of Grace as a character, all the clones of her, those creepy little girls. I didn't really care for that sequence. I think once I got over the initial scare, it kind of slows down the game a little bit too much. And I actually wish it was just a cutscene.
I have no idea how I forgot to talk about this, but Mr. X returning? Hell yeah, that was incredible. I loved that moment.
But I don't know, for me, like, I feel like those girls were like all lickers, like, because of the carved head. Like, I don't know, just kind of like something that I impressed upon. I'm probably wrong. Same thing with like Emily. When she mutated, she literally looked like the giant baby from Resident Evil Village. So like I'm wondering, is that like kind of the viral thing? I know that was like more of a hallucinogen, but like still, regardless, like just certain questions and certain things and impressions that kind of like stuck out to me, and memories things. And even like Emily's sister being the one that kidnapped her, like there was a tragic thing to the girl, and that's kind of one of the things I really appreciate about that, because usually when Resident Evil gives you these giant creatures or giant scary things, there's not really like an essence of like feeling bad for it. But Requiem actually made me feel bad for some of the zombies that I was actually going after, because it felt like they still were human to a certain degree, even like the big ones. And I thought that was actually really impressive, the way that they kind of carved that out in a story structure, even if it wasn't explicitly right in your face. And I think that's just where the storytelling for Requiem is to a whole other degree. So, and then plus like Redfield's like crew saving Leon and Grace at the very end. I'm curious to see where that goes. I think the sequel to this should absolutely be a Jill, Claire, or Chris game. Like, I think those three, it's time to put them in the limelight. I do think a DLC needs to be said about this. I think Chris needs to find Xeon. I'm mispronouncing it. Again, I was up till 1 a.m. playing this game, but I really love what they did with this game. As I said, it's a perfect game for me. It's a masterpiece. I love it. My rant's over. Definitely go subscribe to Hot Mic Gaming. Thank you so much for watching this. And of course, until next time, stay classy.